Without empathy, there can be no understanding. And without understanding, we don't ever truly know the people we interact with. It's undoubtedly true that some people are naturally more attuned to other people's thoughts, needs, and feelings. However, this is also something that can be practiced and developed over time, just like any other soft skill. For instance, developing empathy requires growing in being respectful, sincere, loving, and caring. It requires having an interest in other people's lives and being open-minded to the differences that make each person unique. These are all virtues that we can practice and nurture over time, and our aim for today's lesson. We move from our previous lesson in relating with empathy, and today we look at practicing empathy. In addition to this, developing empathy requires setting aside your own personal biases, opinions, agenda, and beliefs, and choosing instead to accept people wholeheartedly as they are for who they are, flaws and all. So by the end of today's lesson, you will be able to define the steps to cultivate empathy and learn how to practice empathy. Empathy then is an ability that is well worth cultivating. This means truly making an effort to stop and think for a moment about the other person's perspective in order to begin to understand where they are coming from. And then we need the emotional capacity to care for that person's concern. Caring does not mean that we would always agree with the person, that we would change our position, but it does mean that we would be in tune with what that person is going through, so that we can respond in a manner that acknowledges their thoughts, feelings, or concerns. Developing empathy aren't easy. It will take work and effort on your part. In fact, you will need to be more conscious and aware of yourself, others, and of your shared surroundings. Moreover, you will need to go the extra mile to dig deeper into a person's psychological world to truly understand them at a core level of awareness. Initially, as you work through the following 6 steps, you may struggle a little. At the beginning stages, empathy will take a significant amount of concentration on your part, and it will be easy to get sidetracked and fall back into old habits. But I would urge you to resist the temptation. To develop empathy, you must commit yourself to working through each of these 6 steps. No skipping steps or changing the order. It's rather important that you initially follow the process of steps exactly as they are listed below. Then, after a while, when you start feeling comfortable with each step, you can begin to adjust and adapt them to each person and situation. Let's outline the 6 steps. First up is imagine yourself in the other person's shoes. The first step to developing empathy is to imagine yourself as the other person. In other words, imagine yourself in their shoes, viewing their life through their unique experiences. Every person brings to each experience a unique set of beliefs, values, and perspectives that influences their opinions and ultimately how they view and interpret the world. For example, these beliefs, for instance, influence what they say, what they fear, and subsequently what they avoid doing. They influence who they trust, how they trust, and how they respond to problems and adversity. Moreover, they bring to each experience emotional baggage that affects their state of mind. These emotions influences how they see you, how they look at themselves, and ultimately how they deal with the events and circumstances in their life. When we ask the question then, how would I feel if I were in their shoes? We must consider all these factors mentioned above to help us get an understanding of their true feelings, intentions, and motives. It's therefore paramount when interacting with another person to take all these factors into consideration, and then use them to help you shift how you read another person in the context of the situation they find themselves in. Yet this does not mean, for instance, we excuse bad behavior that was acted towards you. But it does mean we gain the most accurate understanding of the other person's intention and behavior in order to respond wisely. And now to step 2. Having put yourself in the other person's shoes, It's now time to dig a little deeper to uncover the person's feelings and underlying intentions. To do this, you will need to subtly insert some variations of the following questions into your conversations in order to build that empathy. So here goes the few questions. First up is, what's on your mind? Or, how do you feel about that? Or, please tell me more about. These questions are gentle probing questions that help you get a sense of their current state of mind and how it's affecting them at the present moment. Developing empathy requires this kind of gentle probing. You need to ask questions that encourage the other person to open up to you, to express their true feelings and intentions. Only in this way can you truly understand who they are and how they feel at this particular moment. However, questions alone won't reveal all the answers you are seeking. Unless you have a very close relationship or friendship with another person, then they will likely hold things back. They won't divulge their true feelings to protect their self-esteem. Everyone comes bundled with a set of insecurities that prevent them from being around others as they truthfully desire to be. As a result, people often hold back from expressing their true feelings and intentions in order to protect themselves from judgment, criticism, embarrassment, or ridicule. So you must therefore never solely rely on the answers that people give you, but rather challenge yourself to gently probe a little deeper. Ask yourself things like, how does this person feel, and why do I think so? Could they be hiding their true feelings, and do I understand why? What am I hearing the other person say? What about that gives me insight? What am I seeing the other person do, and in what way? And what about that gives me insight? We do this not to solve their problem or give answer to their issue, not to give advice or figure out their concerns. No, those are theirs to do. We are delving and probing because we are practicing empathy and creating a space that allows someone to be who they need to be in order for them to solve the problems that they have to. Using the insight and understanding they've gained by being allowed to think for themselves. When the other person now starts feeling comfortable in your presence, they will be more willing and able to express themselves. In other words, they will become vulnerable, which will help them to express their true feelings and intentions. When they reach this stage, it's paramount that you take the time to identify with their experiences and the feelings and emotions that accompany those experiences. You might, of course, not always be able to relate to another person's experience. However, you can still imagine yourself living through those experiences and the accompanying feelings and emotions. Or you may possibly have similar experiences that you can relate back to the circumstances they are currently going through. Either way, it's crucial that you consistently convey to the other person that you acknowledge where they are coming from. But if for any reason you are having difficulty relating to what they are saying, then it's important to probe a little deeper. Encourage the other person to talk and express how they're feeling and how these circumstances are affecting their state of mind, life, and relationships. While interacting with the other person, it's important to keep in mind that people are rarely 100% honest and real in social settings. Like mentioned before, this doesn't mean that people are intentionally deceiving you. They are merely protecting their feelings and masking their insecurities. Given this, it's essential that you don't take things at face value. Think objectively about what the other person is saying and doing. It's very possible that what you're hearing or observing may just be a fragment of the truth. Given this, it is important to then reflect and confirm that what you hear is indeed what they mean. So we do this by reflecting back what has been said and ask for clarification if there's something you don't fully comprehend. For an example, you can ask, "What I hear you say is that correct?" Refer to the lessons on active listening as well as summarizing and paraphrasing for more information and statements to memorize. And now step 5. This is where you provide the other person with emotional support. By this stage, you should have a relatively good understanding of the other person's state of mind and what they potentially need in this situation. This, of course, doesn't mean that you have the green light to give the other person unsolicited advice. It instead means to be there for them emotionally, physically, mentally, and maybe even spiritually. Be gentle and encourage the other person to find the strength they need to move forward. This strength, of course, comes from within them, not from you. And the best way to do this is to ask questions that encourage the other person to take the initiative to move past the obstacles and fears that are holding them back. And then step 6, practicing boundaries. The one drawback to practicing empathy is that it's very easy to get emotionally drawn into the other person's world, where their problems, pain, and experiences essentially become our problems, pain, and experiences. But this can very quickly become overwhelming and interfere with our quality of life and our ability to help others. So, given this, it's important that we detach emotionally from other people's experiences. This, of course, won't be easy, but it's something we must do to maintain our healthy state of mind. Remember, this is the person's pain, not mine. I can come alongside them to support, but don't have to solve or fix the pain for them. Meaning, we need to allow the person the insights they've gained from being in a safe space where they were allowed to think aloud and for themselves, and were left and enabled to find their own solutions, to test that, and to feel accountable for it. It breeds self-respect and a sense of pride in handling their own life and its obstacles. It empowers them to conquer their battles and overcome, finding courage and strength in their own answers, whilst feeling your support by allowing them to be. Obviously, we can challenge someone if we feel they are blindly going into an irrational decision or behavior, but we can do so by asking them a challenging question and not giving them advice or telling them what to do or not. We can ask a question like, what might be the outcome of your choice? What outcome would you desire? And if there is a misalignment to their choice and the healthier outcome they desire, then we might ask, so what would you need to do instead to get to that desired outcome? This might alter the choices they make in order to change their behavior in order to get to the outcome they want. Remember, if we want a different outcome, we need to put in different behavior, different choices. Otherwise, if we continually behave and make the same decisions, we can't expect to get a different outcome. So, empathy requires a high degree of emotional intelligence and boundary management, but we will cover this in later lessons again. When you're emotionally intelligent, you are better able to read people and understand their emotional needs and tendencies. You can then use this understanding to help you respond to people with a higher degree of empathy and manage your boundaries to know when you need to step back and allow them to remain in control of their own life. So now that we have the steps to develop our empathy, let's move into our second lesson objective of now learning how to practice empathy. And we start off with some tips to remember. The first practical tip to consider while practicing empathy is listening. Listen with your ears, your eyes, and your heart. Pay attention to the other person's body language, to their tone of voice, to the hidden emotions behind what they are saying to you, and to the context. Listen to the entire message that the person is trying to communicate. For example, what tone of voice is being used? What is the person doing with their body while speaking? And what do you think the other person feels? And then don't interrupt. Don't also dismiss their concerns offhand. Don't rush to give advice. Don't change the subject. Allow the person their moment. And then use people's name. Also remember the names of the people's spouse and children so that you can refer to them by name. Be fully present. Don't check your email, look at your watch, or take phone calls when a direct report or person drops into your office or somewhere to talk to you. Put yourself in their shoes. How would you feel if your boss did that to you? And then encourage people, particularly quiet people, when they speak up in meetings. Encourage that. A simple thing like an attentive nod can boost people's confidence. And also remember to smile. Give genuine recognition and praise. Pay attention to what people are doing and catch them doing the right things. When you give praise, spend a little effort to make your genuine words memorable. For example, you're an asset to this team because. Or, I would have missed this if you hadn't picked it up. Thank you. And then take a personal interest in people. Show people that you care by having a genuine curiosity about their lives. Ask them questions about their hobbies, their challenges, their families, or their aspirations. And then pause your viewpoint and try to see things from the other person's point of view. They probably aren't being unkind, stubborn, or unreasonable. They are just reacting to a situation with the knowledge they have available. You will have your time to share your viewpoint. Pause it for now, so that you can have a greater understanding of the other. Then, validate the other person's perspective they are offering you. Once you see why others believe what they believe, acknowledge it. You can accept that people have different opinions from your own, and that they may have good reason to hold those opinions. And then examine your attitude. Are you more concerned with getting your way, winning, or being right? Or is your priority to find the best solution for the situation, build relationships, and even accept others? Without an open mind and attitude, you probably won't have enough room for empathy. And then ask what the other person would do. When in doubt, ask the person to explain their position or what they see to move forward with. Empathy is an emotional and thinking muscle that becomes stronger the more we use it. Try some of these suggestions and watch the reactions of those you work with. I believe you will notice some positive results. So, how would empathy present in a conversation? An empathy statement is a statement that indicates that you are perceiving, that is, thinking or feeling empathically with the other person. It shows that you say what the other person is most likely feeling. The empathy statement is ideally delivered in the tonality, gestures, facial expression, and voice volume that would match the other person. Here are some example statements of empathy that you can memorize for your next empathic response. First up is, I'm sorry that this happened to you. Or, I can imagine that was upsetting. Or whatever emotional word the other person is sharing. Or, that must have been really disappointing. Or whatever emotional word the other person is sharing. In the lesson notes, there is a great activity for reflecting on your own empathy levels and how to be more empathic today. Please take the time to complete that activity, as it will provide you with insight and know-how on to apply empathy healthily and with more ease. Remember, empathy is like emotional first aid. These kind of responses are like the bandage you want to put on an open wound. After the wound has expressed or has healed, one can move forward and challenge and discuss further things more logically. But in the moment, these statements work wonders. So the next time you struggle to see something from another person's point of view, strive to remember the following. You don't have the whole picture, remember. At any given time, a person is dealing with many factors of which you're completely unaware. And then the way you think and feel about a situation may very well differ from one day to the next, influenced by various elements, including your current mood and circumstances. And then under emotional stress, you may behave very differently than you think you would. Keeping these points in mind will affect how you view the other person and influence how you deal with them. And since each of us goes through our own struggle at one point or another, it's only a matter of time before you'll need that same level of understanding from someone else. Having done this lesson, you might very well be itching to get out there and begin practicing your empathy skills. However, before you get started, I would like to offer you some words of caution. Empathy is very delicate. It's gentle and subtle. As such, you must be very careful how you use it and very vigilant of how people respond to it. In other words, don't jump the gun. Don't rush into things and don't come across as being too strong. For instance, while conversing with people, avoid the temptation of trying to complete their sentences. This can come across as extremely rude and even irritating, not empathic. You, of course, have good intentions, but it's important to remember that empathy comes through active listening skills. Meaning, work on listening first, then responding appropriately. And when you do respond, please don't give people unsolicited advice. Your goal is not to provide answers and solutions, but to instead draw the answers out of them. Be there to show the person that you care and support them. Then, once you have established a right amount of rapport, pose questions that help draw out the right answers. Also remember, your primary objective with empathy is to leave people feeling confident and empowered. Yes, it might be frustrating at times when people struggle to find the answers for themselves. However, resist the temptation to judge or blame or advise. And certainly don't attempt to fix people. Everyone must find the answers for themselves. You are just there to provide them with emotional support and a space where they can be. Guide them down the best path that will leave them feeling confident and empowered. And finally, it's important that you refrain from making assumptions. People's emotions and state of mind will push them to say certain things that might not be entirely true or accurate. This is where you need to dig a little deeper to get to their underlying concerns and motives. It's only when all these things have surfaced will you be able to see the full picture and the story behind the veil. In conclusion, empathy, just like any other soft skill, takes time to practice and master. It requires developing your active listening skills, as well as your emotional intelligence. However, if you're genuinely interested in the well-being of others, then working through the process and steps covered in this lesson will help you to develop and grow your empathy skills over time. But remember that it is a process. It takes time. It's something that becomes part of your nature through mindful practice and consistent application. In our upcoming lesson, we unpack summarizing and paraphrasing as our next skill for you as a coaching leader. In short, summarizing and paraphrasing is the ability to play back information to the coachee without judgment or without imposing on the coachee's thinking. It's also the ability to allow the coachee to hear what they are saying in order for them to get the insight they need to move forward. Until next time, I look forward to seeing you there.